If you're a fan of intense survival horror, atmospheric storytelling, and heart-pounding gameplay, then you're in for a treat. These terrifying games will plunge you into dark and haunting worlds, filled with relentless enemies, mind-bending puzzles, and a constant sense of dread. So grab your flashlight, brace yourself for the unknown, and get ready to explore the spine-chilling realms of horror gaming. Dead Space is the first game on our list. It's a third-person survival horror game set in space. The terror is multiplied when you have to contend with creepy monsters in the void of space, which is already a terrifying environment in and of itself. Dead Space was released at a time when fans were aching for a modern game that delivered on the promise of true survival horror. When it was first introduced in 2008, there was nothing else on the market that was quite like it. It's true that the first Resident Evil games were terrifying, but the dated tank controls have prevented them from holding up as well over time. Although it has the feel of a modern game, Dead Space nonetheless makes references to the claustrophobic atmosphere of the level design of Resident Evil. It's the best of both worlds, and now you have even more of a reason to check it out before the release of the Dead Space remake. You may do so in anticipation of that game. Next, we will talk about Days Gone. Although the majority of the criticism directed at Days Gone is unwarranted, the game does receive a fair amount of it at times. Even if the quality of Days Gone isn't quite up to par with the rest of Sony's first-party games, the game is still a lot of fun to play. It has a significant number of the shooting mechanics used in the more current Resident Evil games, but it also features a moving narrative and a vast open area. It doesn't matter how this game stacks up against other games that are only available on the PlayStation, the fact remains that the action gameplay is enjoyable. It has a robust progression system, a large number of missions, and a detailed crafting system, which gives it the impression of a survival game. It is highly recommended that you give Days Gone a shot if you are a fan of the more action-oriented Resident Evil titles. Next game on our list is The Last of Us. It would be difficult to have a conversation about legendary horror games without including The Last of Us. This video game, as well as its sequel, The Last of Us Part 2, focuses more on dramatic storytelling and incorporates survival features that give the impression that every encounter is a life-or-death situation. You'll be searching for ammo and supplies one second, and then the next, you'll be confronted with a major story beat that completely alters the path that the game's narrative takes the next time you play it. The acting, performances, writing, and fighting in The Last of Us are all outstanding, which is a credit to Naughty Dog's abilities as a game developer. Now we will talk about Dying Light 2. A gigantic sequel to the original Dying Light, Dying Light 2 is the newest game on this list. Techland has created a massive world that players are free to roam and investigate in any way they see fit. The open area alone offers dozens of hours of gameplay. Dying Light 2 takes the open-world zombie game idea and improves upon it, providing you with many possibilities to pick up tasks, uncover treasures, and select whether or not you want to combat a horde of zombies or escape off into the night. In addition, the game gives you the option to choose whether or not you want to play as a female character. You'll be able to viscerally feel every rooftop leap and grappling hook glide thanks to the first-person view of the zombie-infested landscape, which is thanks to the parkour system that made Dying Light such a standout title. The parkour mechanic is still present and has been improved upon since the game's initial release. Moving forward, our next game is Alien Isolation. As we have discussed earlier, there is much to be said about the eerie atmosphere that can be created by placing a horror story in space. This is where Alien Isolation comes in. It takes an already established intellectual property and manages to become, arguably, the best entry in the entire series. Because you play as Amanda Ripley, Ellen Ripley's daughter, in Alien Isolation, the game has a significant place in the canon of the Alien franchise. In addition to its narrative, the gameplay is suspenseful due to the fact that the lethal xenomorph is always present in the environment. This ups the ante and requires you to approach each circumstance with caution, as the stakes have been raised. The game is less focused on action than some of the others on our list, with more of an emphasis placed on sneaking around and hiding than on full-on combat. Next on our list is Silent Hill. Resident Evil and Silent Hill go hand in hand a lot of the time. Both were released for the first iteration of PlayStation around the same time and were notable for pushing the capabilities of the system to its absolute maximum. Players will be able to pause the action and use a wide array of weaponry to take out their adversaries in Silent Hill, which boasts a combat system that is almost identical to that of the earlier Resident Evil games. Naturally, the monsters that you encounter in Silent Hill are considerably more abstract in nature, drawing their cues from the things that you might see in your nightmares. Another one of the fan-favorite series that has been absent for far too long may finally be making a comeback sooner rather than later, according to recent rumors. Up next, we will talk about BioShark. It might seem like a reach to argue that BioShark is one of the games that are similar to Resident Evil at first, but the truth is that the two games have more in common than you might at first believe. Even if the events of BioShark take place in a magical environment, the experience's primary focus is on the horror genre. Even while the hideous foes known as splicers might not appear to be zombies at first glance, you should still try to avoid coming into contact with them. As you make your journey across the realm of Rapture, the gameplay in BioShark is some of the most gratifying you'll find, as it encourages you to discover new areas and gather resources along the way. BioShark excels in its environmental storytelling, which gives the game's world the impression of being a real place, much like the most recent Resident Evil games. Next, we will talk about Left 4 Dead. Valve did a fantastic job of capitalizing on an idea with Left 4 Dead, which other game developers have failed to duplicate. Even Left 4 Dead's spiritual sequel, Back 4 Blood, which is scheduled to be released in 2021, might not be as popular as the original. Left 4 Dead was able to pull off a gratifying first-person shooting experience while also offering a variety of hard and humorous campaigns, each of which had its own distinct feel. The progression of a mission could be disrupted by the unpredictable positioning of hostile zombies, but the overall experience would typically strike an agreeable balance between challenge and enjoyment. Left 4 Dead and its sequel will be just up your alley if you're searching for a game that's similar to Resident Evil because of the series' reputation for being goofy and absurd. If this is the kind of stuff that appeals to you, go no further. Next on our list is The Medium. The Medium is a mind-bending psychological horror video game developed by Bloober Team. Because the narrative is such a significant part of it, we won't give too much away here. It more frequently delves into the main character's psyche, which brings it more in line with the more sinister aspects of Resident Evil. A split-screen display allows players to manage both realities at the same time, which is the game's primary gameplay mechanic. This paves the way for a plethora of ingenious riddles, which is one of the reasons why The Medium earns a spot on this list of games that are similar to Resident Evil. It does not have the same level of polish as Capcom's games, but it is unquestionably worth checking out, even if for no other reason than the inclusion of a novel concept. Lastly, we will talk about Evil Within. The Evil Within is a series of video games that are a spiritual successor to the Resident Evil franchise. In point of fact, Shinji Mikami, the man behind the Resident Evil series, was the one behind the camera for this one. After playing through both series, it is clear that the same developer was responsible for each of them. The Evil Within is more focused on the psychological terror aspects of the horror genre, and it will present you with bizarre creatures and scenarios that do not occur in the reality that we are familiar with. However, in terms of its gameplay, The Evil Within is a greatest hits compilation of the Resident Evil games that came before it. It combines elements of stealth and action, all within the context of survival horror. If you are only going to play one game from our list of games that are similar to Resident Evil, you absolutely must make it The Evil Within. Thank you for joining us on this spine-chilling journey through the top 10 horror games that will satisfy your craving for fear, just like the legendary Resident Evil series. We hope you discovered some new titles to add to your gaming library. Did any of these games pique your interest? Or do you have other horror games in mind that you'd like to recommend? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more thrilling gaming content and updates on the latest releases. Until next time, may your nights be filled with both terror and exhilaration.